There's no doubt that we're going back to more of a 1990s mentality and less of a mentality of the post-9/11 world in terms of our willingness to engage again. Exhibit A would be Syria. Syria reminds me of Bosnia. The way in which the world is responding to Syria reminds me of how we very reluctantly and slowly and minimally responded to Bosnia in the mid-90s. And I think that doesn't mean America is going to disengage. What it means is we're not going to be as apt to go into these difficult missions and start new ones. We're going to be more of the standoff power. We're going to be more trying to deter the big war, the North Korea or China conflagration, less apt to get involved in these messy operations. That's where I would sum it up. I'm an American, and I'm not going to try to wade too deeply into Australian national sovereignty decisions. And Americans respect and appreciate what Australia's been doing, for example, in Afghanistan. So let me say all that at first. Yeah. And that's important. But of course, we're also at a point where the United States, perhaps somewhat wastefully or perhaps appropriately, is spending more than 4% of its GDP on its military at a time when, frankly, we really can't afford it. And so it strikes me that if the United States is spending 4%, I would love to say that Western countries in general should spend 4%. But being more realistic and recognizing that NATO's aspiration is now for 2%, and that someone like South Korea, a country like that, is around 2.5%, I think that 2.5% range is a nice target number, which would represent a 30 to 50% increase for Australia right now. Now that's a very crude way to think about this, and I'm just notionally laying out that kind of a number. But it would seem to me to be a more fair number if we think about burden sharing. Well, I think that we do feel that our allies should be contributing more. We have felt that way for decades, for the most part. It doesn't mean that we're going to hold a gun to anybody's head, including our own, and say that because others don't do what we would prefer, that we're going to somehow disengage. That would be bad for our own interests as well as for everyone else's, I think. And so I'm not suggesting that this is some dramatic crisis in the alliance. Well, one reason I'd like to see Australia spend a little more and keep its forces up is because I value not only Australia's materiel contribution and troop contribution to key missions, but also its insights into how to wrestle with this notion of a rising China. And when I look around this region, the allies that I think have the best feel for how to understand China's rise are Australia and Korea. Nothing against our friends the Japanese, but of course they're getting into some disputes with the Senkaku Islands. Japan sort of oscillates between a degree of pacifism and then a degree of nationalism. I feel like Australia and Korea are two countries that really want to get along with China, but also have strong Western values and really want to get along with the United States. And I think there are going to be enough bumps in the road handling China's rise and knowing how to respond correctly with just the right touch of firmness, but also positive engagement, that we need the advice of Australia. We're going to need Canberra and other Australians to be providing us their insights and pushing back against ours